the ones who are being insulted are the Malaysian football fans. After having been on a high following the 4-0 win over Vietnam, once again that real ugly head of Malaysian football, Sandiwara, has been exposed at the quickest timing possible. Just as you thought the future is going brighter for the Malaysian national team, here comes that ugly dragon head that comes and tries to ensnares the whole thing. And this has been a regular feature involving the Malaysian national team, whether it was Kim Panggon, K. Rajagopal, Tan Cheng Ho in the last decade, and right now Klemoski, or even the coaches in the previous decades over those years. Whether it was political interference, whether it was state FA interference, whether it was the highest decision making FAM where they interfere in certain decisions. On 16th of July, the Football Association of Malaysia announced their withdrawal from the biennial Central Asian Football Association Nations Cup less than a month after it was confirmed as one of the two guest teams alongside Oman for the upcoming tournament that will be co-hosted by Uzbekistan and Tajikistan in the group stage. The dramatic U-turn less than in that short space of time after its confirmation, as well as having its group allocated alongside CAFA members Iran, co-host Tajikistan, and also and Afghanistan, sparked a furor in the country over once again the priorities of the Malaysian national team, and what is Harimau Malaya going to do now that they've withdrawn from the Central Asian Regional Tournament. In this context, before I elaborate further on the fallout of the CAFA tournament, the CAFA tournament is the Central Asia's equivalent of the ASEAN Championship, where the member nations of the Central Asian Football Association, which comprise of 4 of the 5 former Soviet republics who are also member associations of the Asian Football Confederations, Uzbekistan, who recently qualified for their first ever World Cup finals, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan. And then you also have new members in Iran and Afghanistan, who joined from the West Asian and the South Asian Football Federations respectively to form the CAFA. And when it comes to the CAFA Cup, this is actually only the second edition that this CAFA Cup is hosted, and is set to be hosted on a biennial basis every 2 years. So in this context, once again, like the first edition in 2023, the CAFA will now be reduced to the same 7 teams, with Oman once again being the only guest team in this tournament. In 2023, Russia was supposed to join to participate in the first CAFA Cup, but it withdrew without confirming its entry into the tournament. But unlike Russia, Malaysia had actually agreed to participate in this tournament, which was set to run from the 29th of August to 8th of September, with that period which was actually held outside the FIFA window. And Malaysia is not a newcomer in playing in tournaments outside of the FIFA window, for the ASEAN Championship is actually also another regional tournament, Asian subcontinent tournament, that is always held outside the FIFA international windows, which usually at best spend in at most 2 weeks. So why is this fallout from the withdrawal from the CAFA Nations Cup such a big issue? Tiada attempts to find out the whole context in which Malaysia agreed to participate in and subsequently withdrew less than a month after its confirmation, and with its group already allocated into the tournament. Now, in this context, before I delve further into Malaysia's withdrawal and fallout from the CFA tournament, let's use a different analogy in this regard, because CFA is also one of the only five Asian sub-confederations that actually have guest teams that participate in this tournament. Let's say, for example, if ASEAN Championship one day expands to allow one or two guest national teams to participate in it. Let's say for example, we choose Mongolia to be the guest team to take part because Australia do not want to be involved, and that leaves the 11 ASEAN nations plus Mongolia, for example. But at the last moment, Mongolia withdraw just say 2 weeks, for example. Again, this is an example. 2 weeks before the start of the tournament, after the draw is already done, all the logistics has already been planned, even the fixture schedules have been prepared, and with even the ASEAN Football Federation prepared to make certain accommodations for the Mongolian players, but the Mongolian Football Federation at this instance says that they really can't afford the high cost of traveling around the entire Southeast Asia, and they decide to pull out. This is actually the same situation that Malaysia is facing in this actual fallout. The Mongolia one is fictional. The Malaysia case is not. And that fallout has serious implications because, first, it is not every day that Malaysia gets to be invited into such overseas competitions as guest nations. Now imagine if you are invited for a tournament where the level of opponents is a lot higher, and also where the competition is expected to be stiffer, stronger, and you're not expected to go through to the next round, but you'll gain a lot of tournament experience beyond your FIFA ranking points ahead of the remaining Asian Cup qualifying matches, especially the double header against Laos and the return leg against Vietnam away. So these are valuable learning opportunities, playing opportunities, especially when among the other 7 nations who are still in this CAFA Nations Cup, 2 of them have qualified for the World Cup, Iran and Uzbekistan. And Iran is in Malaysia's supposed group, and that would have been Harimau Malaya's first opportunity to play Iran in a competitive game since the 2007 Asian Cup finals, when Iran comfortably defeated Malaysia at the Bukit Jalil National Stadium 2-0 in the final Group C game 18 years ago. Now, putting all this back into context, why is this such a serious? What are the implications? What are the consequences in all this? To agree to take part knowing that it falls outside the FIFA window, there's probably some calculation involved at the start, whether it's by the national head coach Peter Klemoski or by other members above him, whether it is on the Harimau Malaya's Malaya management under the silent ownership or silent leadership of TM Tugu Mahkota of Johor, or the FAM leadership, who were supposedly the rubber stamping authorities who agreed to this tournament. In this fallout, after a late withdrawal, yes, it's more than a month to go before the tournament actually begins on the 28th of August, yet it leaves a very bitter taste in the mouths of the Central Asians. And don't forget, when you're dealing with Central Asians, they are very different from Southeast Asia. In Southeast Asia, in the case, they can say, yes, we understand, we can give and take. The Central Asians will not take this as kindly as Southeast Asia. This is an inevitable fact. Never mind that they used to be part of the Soviet Union, but the culture, the outlook, the thinking, the mentality are very different from that of Southeast Asia. So how is that going to be acceptable for the Central Asian football authorities? How is that acceptable to those Central Asians who are working in Malaysia as part of the Asian Football Confederation? How would they see the Football Association of Malaysia when they decided to make such a volte-face after being confirmed in the draw in the tournament, and already with the group already being decided alongside Iran, Tajikistan, and Afghanistan? You're not talking about playing against your Sri Lanka before all the naturalized players come in, or Brunei, or even Guam. No, you're not talking about this level. It's a different level. It's higher. In fact, playing Iran is a lot better than playing against Thailand 5 times. That's one. Then you got Tajikistan, who are no slouches and are already slowly making their mark in Asia, at least at the national team level, if not at the club level after Istiqlal. Then you got Afghanistan. Yes, Afghanistan football is plagued with problems. And when you have your former captain not involved in the team for a while because of internal issues and the spotlight over the Afghanistan Football Association or Football Federation president, but that's a different matter. The players who usually come from the foreign diaspora, they are usually no slouches, although it also presents Malaysia with a winnable campaign. But from a football diplomatic point of view, withdrawing at such short notice, even though it's more than a month, is an absolute disaster. Is an absolute slap in the face in front of the Central Asian football authorities, never mind the individual associations of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan, as well as those of Iran and Afghanistan, and even the guest team Oman. Those 7 nations who are still in this tournament that is set to kick off in late August. It is to them totally unacceptable. I mean, imagine if Mongolia did that to, in this fictional scenario that I just mentioned earlier on, if Mongolia did such a about face 2 weeks before the start of the tournament, how will the ASEAN Football Federation feel? How will Kev Somov, the president of the AFF, or Winston Lee Boon Aun, the Secretary General of the AFF, feel? They will feel very insulted, and I would expect the CAFA to feel the same way. It's a disaster in football diplomacy. It's a disaster when it comes to the relations between the ASEAN Football Federation and the CAFA. It's also a disaster between Football Association Malaysia and the other football associations in Central Asia, and even to perhaps Oman. It shows that tournaments can be, you can put your name there and you can just take up within a month after you have agreed to participate. And as CAFA have already pointed out, not just in the Malaysian media but also in the Uzbek media, where they have agreed to take part only to withdraw. This is I think it's under this Uzbek online portal Zamin. Zamin, where they said, they also mentioned about this withdrawal. It is not a pleasant situation to be looked at, and it was unexpected. It was very unexpected, even though they are not saying much about it. So they expect CFA to make a statement on this in the next few days. But this about turn of events from the Football Association of Malaysia does reflect perhaps a wider sandiwara that has been in place ever since the special election of Dr. Hamidin Amin as the honorary president of the Football Association of Malaysia. Why such an about face? Why did Malaysian national team coach Peter Klemowski have to come out and say that it's because they're unable to get a full strength squad, they're unable to secure player releases, they're unable to get this, get that, and all this and all that? Well, this is quite ironic from Malaysia. I know they want to prepare as best as they can against quality opponents ahead of the remainder of the Asian Cup qualifiers, where they are top of their group after 2 wins in as many games. And having just seen the controversy over those new latest batch of foreign-born players turning out for the yellow and black of Harimau Malaya, this is the latest of what seems to be never-ending controversies that has engulfed Malaysian football at international level of late. And it reflects rather poorly on the state of behind the scenes operations or behind the scenes backroom boardroom politics at the national level, or the two bodies who are together on paper but they are actually separate entities. The almost independent management of the Malaysian national team and that of the FAM. It reflects a huge friction, especially with the return of Hamidin into the thing. And for Klemoski, once again, as I've warned earlier, with Hamidin Amin's return, Klemoski now has a much more difficult task that his previous full-time predecessor Kim Bang-gon had faced, and it's going to create a lot of pressure in which there are the two parties have shown up again, and Klemoski is stuck in the middle of this unfortunate resurgence of the storm that has engulfed Malaysian football, especially at the national team level, and also having to play the delicate role, walking on what is really a proverbial tightrope, as what Kim Bang-gon had skillfully done until he decided to leave. For Klemoski to come suddenly say, although the points are very valid, they are valid, but it does not excuse Football Association of Malaysia for making such a huge about face, especially when it was previously reported that FPM actually cancelled the Merdeka Pesta Bola Merdeka this year just to participate in the CFA Nations Cup, and now they're not participating in that anymore. What gives? It is very bad for the Harimau Malaya. It is very bad for Klemoski. It is very bad for the Football Association of Malaysia. Nobody wins in this announcement. No one. Everybody loses, from the players all the way to the boardroom level, to the council, to the FN Council. All lose, all have lost in this debacle. How bad is it? From the players' side, even if Klemoski is unable to secure the release of key players who are based outside of Malaysia, that means not even having Dion Kus from Japan, where he's just beginning to make appearances for Cerezo Osaka in the J1 League, or even other foreign-born players who are still based in Colombia and Spain, and perhaps with JDT also being focused on the Shopee Cup as well. It does, I wouldn't say beggar belief, it does make Klemoski's task in forming a credible squad for the CFA Nations Cup a lot tougher. Malaysia can still actually send a team to take part in the CFA Nations Cup, but by then, who could it be? Is it an understrength team of uncapped players, or in a way that was similar to how Malaysia had their national team in the ASEAN Championship? Or is it going to be Nafuzi Science Malaysia Under-23, who did not have the best of starts in the ongoing ASEAN Under-23 Championships? Either way, it's not going to show up well even if they had turned up, because the Central Asians will want the best of Malaysian football, not the B team, not the C team. After all, you're not competing in the East Asian Football Championships, where Japan could afford to send a C team for the men's tournament and the B team made out of mainly domestic players for the women's tournament that just concluded recently in South Korea. But for what it's really, Malaysia blew a golden opportunity to showcase themselves against a few of Asia's best from Central Asia. Because it's not just about your Iran and Uzbekistan. Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, they have all recently, in recent years, have qualified for the Asian Cup finals as well. So they are no slouches in Asia either. It shows a very true strength of their level of football vis-a-vis Southeast Asia. This is Central Asia. Even if you take out Iran and Afghanistan, they're still there. Southeast Asia, even with if you put in only the best four, will still be at a lower level than them. So it was a rare opportunity for Malaysian football to learn, to at least experience what it was like, what it was going to be like to play regularly or even at a high competitive level against the Central Asian teams, many of whom will be fighting for their national pride, fighting for on behalf of their national populations, to battle in the battle to see who is the best Central Asian team in that sub-region, Asian sub-region. Yet, in making that announcement, they totally threw it all away. But Klemoski does not have it easy. He probably wants a very reasonably strong team to compete, for him to lay out his formation, to lay out his planning on how he wants Malaysia to play. It's not just in the 3-4-3 or 5-2-3 or 5-3-2 formation. He probably wants to use it as an opportunity to experiment on potential tournament simulations, where he can get probably, let's say, the strongest 11 against Iran, then possibly against Tajikistan, still a strong 11, but probably a few tweaks along the way. And then you have your Afghanistan. Maybe this is time for the bench players to finally make an appearance, get an official cap to their name, and to gain some invaluable playing experience playing outside of Southeast Asia. It's not a must-win tournament for Malaysia, but it was a valuable opportunity to gain some serious international experience against some of the better teams in Asia. And for Klemoski, he would actually have preferred it that way, because it allowed him to simulate what could be the case when it comes to the next Asian Cup finals in Saudi Arabia, how the conditions are going to be like, especially when the Central Asian environment is somewhat similar to, not totally, somewhat similar to Saudi Arabia, where you got these football facilities, where you got these training conditions that is not the same as tropical heat in this part of the world, and also playing against tougher opponents. What to expect, how to prepare, how to handle, how to combat the overall characteristics of a strong Central Asian team when it comes to a major tournament. Iran may be using it as a time to experiment their players. It's an opportunity to see how good those players are, even though they are mainly playing in the domestic Iranian league. Same for Central Asia, same for Tajikistan, same against Afghanistan. So it is a very big opportunity loss. It's a great shame that valuable tournament experience is being thrown away just because of the withdrawal. It is understandable that Klemoski finds it very difficult to get his strongest possible side, and he actually does not want to send an understrength team that really slaps the face of not just the organizers, but also himself, his professional pride, his professional credibility. It's like he can bring an understrength Malaysia squad made up of non-JDT players, made up of non-Selangor players. Yes, you will have your Paulo Jose again, all these players who have been experienced enough to play. But that would be like a repeat of the ASEAN Championships last year, where Malaysia actually fielded a very understrength team. But is that what Klemoski wants? Where he knows that he has this golden opportunity to get at least a decent strength squad. Maybe he can't get Diongkus, no problem. Maybe he'll ask TMJ to see whether he can release some of those players to play. Maybe if JDT players will form the bulk of the squad, no problem. But for this Sandiwara to evolve until the withdrawal, where already all this while FAM and Harimau Malaya all that while had understood that they're going to take part in this tournament, this was a rare opportunity, and yet shortly after Hamidi retires the honorary president of FAM, it's gone. Totally into garbage. Totally unacceptable. This fiasco, it's probably a start of many problems that will come. It's a start of a wave of storms that will come for Harimau Malaya. It will be a renewed start of that struggle between Datuk Hamidin Amin and Tunku Ismail Ibrahim, the TMJ and region of Johor. And then you have the Malaysian national team all stuck in the middle of this storm. Nobody wins. Not even whether it's your JDT or non-JDT players in the national team, no one wins. Because they will have loved to play against Central Asia opponents. And no one in Malaysian club football wins either. Because while they can keep their players, a training camp is a poor substitute for having good games to play against. And don't tell me what Malaysia going to do. Play against Singapore? Play against Indonesia? Indonesia have already lined up their friendlies. That leaves only Singapore, who do not have a friendly lineup yet, under what is supposed to be the interim coach, Gavin Lee. Is Klemoski going to go down to that level just to get some kind of game time? Because that would be a lot less ideal in the September window, where you have this chance to make some tweaks, make some experimentations. And although it's outside of the FIFA international window where clubs are reluctant to release players, outside of Malaysia, Cerezo is not going to release Dion Kus just for that, unless Dion Kus is totally unwanted at Cerezo, which is not the case. Then what about the rest? It is not going to work this way. And FM will have a lot of repair work to do. The repair work is not just internal but external, because for Malaysia to make such a U-turn after being confirmed into the draw and having had their group decided, that's a big slap to the face. This is not Russia. This is Malaysia, where a rare opportunity to come up against some of the better national teams in Asia was thrown away by that one decision on 16th of July. Football Association of Malaysia have a lot of explaining to do. Klemoski can only explain this much from a professional point of view. And already, it smacks in the face of something rather unprecedented that Football Association of Malaysia is already doing during its Asian Cup preparation so far. I can't review what it is, but I understand that there's something pretty unprecedented in the entire history of FAM, that there is this new level of preparatory work that is going on between FAM and the Malaysian national team to get them up to speed through for the remainder of the Asian Cup campaign. And yet this CAFA Cup is a huge slap on the face. It's like slapping yourself, never mind slapping others. The storm will pass, but the scars will be there. And this is the first serious test in Klemoski's reign on how he's going to walk this political tightrope, where the tightrope gets even thinner now, a lot thinner than it previously was. National team coaches always have to endure that political tightrope that exists between the association, the clubs, the players, maybe even with the regional FA or AFC. But in Malaysian football, every national coach always has to handle this unique tightrope that involves the Central FAM as you can say the main football federation of the whole country, and then you have the state FAs, particularly JDT, and then you have key players inside the Exco or council who want to have their own voices or their own concerns heard. But it could have been entirely avoided altogether. It's like, who will actually make the decision to put Malaysia into the CAFA Nations Cup in the first place? even when they actually knew that these dates are outside of the FIFA window. Who made the decision? Is it FAM themselves? Is it somebody in the FAM in the Harimau Malaya setup who decided that this is which I personally think is still a better tournament to play than playing in a couple of friendlies where it's going to be a lot harder, unless you're talking about playing against, once again, the likes of Cape Verde or similarly ranked teams to prepare for the next games ahead. It still beggars a lot of belief. And the window is very short to find opponents in the September window in short notice if Klemoski really wants that. Because, yes, no disrespect to Laos, we do expect 2 wins against Laos in October, but still, this is not the ideal way to play against top opponents and only to say, oh, we don't want because we don't have enough players. It also shows one thing: player development is not at a good level where maybe you can't have your strongest JDT players. But if your Kuala Lumpur cities, your Selangors, your Pahangs, your Penangs, your Kuching cities, Sabahs, all could produce players of similar depth on their own without relying on loan players from JDT at similar level, I think this is a situation that can be avoided. It would not appease the football loving Malaysian public. It would not appease the Ultras Malaya. It would not appease the demanding Malaysian football fans who want nothing but the best results, even in friendly competitions, even though I will admit they are a lot more knowledgeable. They will understand the context in which Malaysia will compete in the CAFA Nations Cup should they still have decided not to withdraw. So it is a case where a lot of things can be avoided, but then one announcement totally shifts the dynamics completely. Once again, the ones who are being insulted are the Malaysian football fans after having been on a high following the 4-0 win over Vietnam. Once again, that real ugly head of Malaysian football, Sandiwara, has been exposed at the quickest timing possible. Just as you thought the future is going brighter for the Malaysian national team, here comes that ugly dragging head that comes and tries to ensnares the whole thing. And this has been a regular feature involving the Malaysian national team, whether it was Kim Pagon, K. Rajagopal, Tan Cheng Ho in the last decade, and right now Klemoski, or even in the coaches in the previous decades over those years. Whether it was political interference, whether it was state FA interference, whether it was the highest decision making in FAM where they interfere in certain decisions. Now even Klemoski is inevitably ensnared in this. Whether Klemoski, Rob Friend is actually involved in this particular unique approach, which I'm not disclosing, that FAM and the Malaysian national team are working together to ensure the best possible preparation for the Asian Cup qualifiers. But yet, even having the best level of Asian Cup preparation is being ensnared by this development of the U-turn, which is very bad, which insults everybody in CAFA and also Malaysian football fans, including those who really do want, those in FAM and the Harimau Malaysia set up, who do want Malaysia to be involved, even though it's outside the international window, for invaluable tournament experience, invaluable exposure in a competitive level against the Central Asian national teams, whom Malaysia do not meet often. It is not the same as meeting Thailand or Indonesia or even Singapore on a regular basis. This is a unique opportunity, a unique window that Malaysia, in that one announcement of withdrawing, threw all away. Pretty unacceptable at all levels. It slaps in the face of knowledgeable Malaysian football fans who know that this is a rare opportunity, who do want Malaysian football to improve, not just merely on JDT but also on the national team. It slaps in the face of forward-looking football officials who want the best for Harimau Malaysia, and at one point where FAM appeared to be in tandem, but yet now it is divided again. And where once again Klemoski fails to escape the sandiwara that engulfs every previous Malaysian national coach in recent years and decades. When will this end? We do not know. Klemoski will survive this episode. Malaysia will still qualify for the Asian Cup. But the repercussions of the withdrawal from the CAFA Nations Cup will affect how Malaysia will get friendly opponents in the future. None of the Central Asian national teams, particularly Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, will be keen to play Malaysia at short notice or even for friendly matches. Because why I mention these three? Because they are at a similar level to Malaysia, the current Malaysian national team. Uzbekistan and Iran will just focus on fine-tuning their preparations ahead of their World Cup campaign in North America next year. As for Afghanistan and Oman, they'll still carry on with their preparations, with their qualifiers ahead as well. But for Malaysia, it's an opportunity that they slam the door on themselves. Nobody wins. The Central Asians will continue with their planning. The CFA Nations Cup will now go on without Malaysia. They will continue as what they did in 2023 when Russia did not take part. But Malaysia will not be invited back into such tournaments like this in the near future. No way. No way. They're not going to be invited back into even, let's say, if there's a guest slot for, say, the Gulf Cup. No way Malaysia will be invited back. They will just ask Indonesia, because Indonesia, they are in their fourth round of World Cup qualifying, and Indonesia have never done such a thing before. It could be other regional teams that could get ahead of Malaysia in this regard. Indonesia, maybe one day even the Philippines, Thailand, they could. And it could have been all avoided in the first place, either if they have turned down CFA invitation, or if already once they have committed, Klemoski said that he will find a team to play no matter what. Even though the latter option will slap in the face of the more demanding Malaysian football fans who do not know the complexities of Malaysian football, the sandiwara that evolves around. So what gives? And this is one big almighty mess that FAM, Harimau Malaya all have to solve to bail Klemoski out of this tightrope, this quagmire that he involuntarily finds himself in.